Hello everyone, welcome to the Teaching English webinar for teacher educators. My name is Shirin Saraz and I'll be your moderator today. Thank you all so much for joining this live event. This webinar is about how teacher educators can help teachers face the challenges and embrace the opportunities and recent developments in artificial intelligence and language learning. And as usual, before we start the session, I'd like to share a number of quick housekeeping reminders with you. While waiting, please share with us in the Q&A where you are from. If you work in pre-service teacher education, type pre-service. If you work in service, type in-service in the Q&A. And this session is being recorded. A recording of the webinar will be available on Teaching English in the next couple of days. The link to the certificate will be provided in the thank you email that you'll receive tomorrow. Finally, you'll have a chance to ask questions. During the session, please use the Q&A to ask our presenters your question. We'll be using the chat for announcement. So let me introduce our presenter today. Nick Peachy is the Director of Pedagogy at Peachy Publications, an independent digital publishing and consultancy company that specializes in the design of digital learning materials for teachers and trainers. He's been involved in education since 1990 as a teacher, trainer, educational consultant, and project manager. He has more than 20 years experience of working specifically with online, remote, and blended learning environments. He's worked all over the world training teachers and developing innovative and creative products. He's a two-time British Council Elton's Innovations Award winner, and he's been shortlisted 6 times. You can find out more about Nick at our website on his social media channels. And I'd like to invite Nick. So Nick, over to you to launch this exciting session.
Hi, good morning. I hope you can hear me okay. I'll just go to share my screen. See if I can make sure I can share the right one. That always helps. Okay, hopefully you can see my screen now. I'll just adjust things a bit. I need to just drag things around a bit so that they're in a convenient place for me and they're not blocking anything. Hi, good morning or good afternoon or good evening, depending on where you are. This session, as Shirin said, is on artificial intelligence opportunities and challenges. And I'll try and look at these from the perspective of a teacher educator. I won't go into about me too much because Shirin's already given me an introduction, but if you want to check out some of my background through social media, you can come to the presentation later, and all of these icons below link through to the things that I do and share on social media. I will give you a link to the presentation at the end and give you a QR code if you want to scan it. So if you want to get the link and the whole of the presentation to access later, you can get that. So don't worry too much about making notes, especially as we'll be looking at a few different links to different websites and things like different prompts that you can use with AI, which are quite complex. So don't try and write down all the prompts or anything like that. You can get the presentation at the end of the session, and you can copy paste the prompts out and follow up the links then, okay? So don't panic too much. That's a struggle. Okay, so the session, what I want to look at is a bit of background to AI and chatbots, which is what we'll be looking at and what ChatGPT is. We'll look at the kind of things that teachers can do with AI, and then we'll look at the kind of things that students can do with it, and then how we can make it work for us as teacher educators, and the kind of things that we can do, you know, to reinforce our own work. And then at the end, I'll look at some of the common challenges and issues that seem to be coming up around the world as people kind of try to adjust to this new technology. Okay, so let's get started with finding out what you already know. There's a QR code up the top here. If you could scan the QR code with your phone, it'll open a little questionnaire for you, and which is asking you what you already know about ChatGPT, and then we can see what experience people have and what they already know. When you open the link, it'll look something like this. You can just type in there, and then we'll be able to see what everybody knows. I'll add that link to the chat if I can find the chat. Let's go to the chat. The link is in the chat now if you want to go to the questionnaire and do it. I'll just give you a couple of minutes to share that, and then we'll come back and have a look at what we know. Okay, I'm just going to click through to see if there are any answers there yet. Generate some answers. 22 answers, and none of them are showing up. Come on. Oh, there they are. So there, Alexa and such, very little, not a lot. Auto answers according to requests, not much yet. Tried it once or twice. So we've kind of got, that's okay, we've got kind of various kind of shared knowledge there. I'm already teaching, using it for teaching and learning. That's great. Great. Creates human-like answers. Okay, so we've got a real variation. Some people say they know nothing. Some people are already using it in their classrooms. That's great. Okay, my first experience of working with AI and working with chatbots was actually about, I think it was about 2001, 2002. I was working in Morocco, and I had a group of 12-year-old students, and I wanted them to be able to practice with their English, actually interacting with someone. They were, as 12-year-olds, they were very reluctant to interact with each other because, they were all Moroccan. They all spoke French or Arabic or Darija, so they didn't really feel, that there was an information gap there. So I found a website with a chatbot on it, and it was about the time of Steven Spielberg's film AI, artificial intelligence, which was about a robot boy, but it was based on the story of Pinocchio, and the robot boy wanted to become real so that his mother would love him. And there was a very nice chatbot on the website that my students went to, and they could interact with it, just asking it questions and have a conversation with it, or something like a conversation. This was about 20 years ago, and so even then, AI wasn't a particularly new thing, but their conversations were quite limited. It was very easy for the chatbot to become confused if the students changed the subject, or if they made mistakes or something like that. The chatbot would get confused and start producing sort of nonsensical answers, or answers that didn't really fit. But it was quite an interesting exercise for them because, they could ask it almost anything and it would answer. So unlike if you go into a chat room with a real person and, there are all things like the person's ego and self-consciousness and things like that, they felt that because it was not a real person, they could ask it anything. And that's a bit like ChatGPT today. You can ask it anything. But ChatGPT has come a long way. And particularly, seems to have been a huge leap since November with tools like ChatGPT. And what's really different about them in a lot of ways is that, ChatGPT can respond much more spontaneously. It can actually prompt conversation. It can follow conversational threads, so you can reference backwards. You can go back. You can reference something in a conversation, 5 or 6 turns before. It can instigate responses as well. And the other interesting thing about it is it can be programmed. So you can program it to become something else, to take on different roles. And that I think is something that's really interesting for sort of language development and language teaching. If you're really interested in the kind of the technical detail, I've added a couple of links here to little videos. There's one about what is ChatGPT, and if you watch this later, you'll see this avatar who's an artificial intelligence avatar telling you about ChatGPT. And there's another one here on machine learning, if you want to find out more about machine learning. But basically what has happened is that companies like OpenAI have taken a huge amount of linguistic data, in fact, pretty much everything from the internet up to 2021. And they've not just put it into a database and to search like Google does, but they've tagged individual words to reference context. And so now ChatGPT understands the context within which different words have been used in what is a massive, massive corpus, linguistic corpus of content. And so it's able to process that and produce what seems like very authentic, accurate, human-like speech. And that's really exciting, because as well as having all of that content and that understanding, it can draw on its knowledge of that content too. And that's something that we'll come into. And I think that that's really exciting for language teaching. Just to have a quick look at the interface of ChatGPT, this is what it looks like when you open it. We'll actually open it in a minute. There's an infographic here. So when you get this, you can sort of click on different things to see the different parts of the tool. You know, it has a nice sort of chat history, I think, which enables you to go back to previous chats. You can clear conversations, but the main part is just, you know, putting in your prompts and being able to edit them and getting your response. But if you want to check that out later, by all means do. I'll give you a link. Oh, no, we'll go and have a look at it. So this is ChatGPT, and this is live now. So we can sort of just have a quick look, and you can see how it responds if you haven't done this already. Okay, so I'll ask it about what it can do to help teacher educators. Okay, and instantly you can see that it's very quickly providing us with information. I'll increase the size of that, which might make it a little easier for you to read. As you can see, you know, it responds very, very quickly and, you know, offers quite a lot of content very quickly. How accurate that content is another matter, but it's there almost immediately. And, you know, if you think about that, the amount of time it would take you to produce that text yourself, you know, that's quite a big time saving if you're looking for that kind of content. We can drill down further as well. Let's dig a bit deeper. I'll ask for more detail about number 3. Okay. And so it understands what I'm referencing back to number 3, and it gives me more information about that. So in a way, you know, ChatGPT could actually do this session, and it could probably tell you more about how AI could help you and as teacher educators than I can myself. Anyway, I shouldn't say that really, because it might put me out of a job, but, you know, maybe that's going to happen anyway. I don't know. So let's have a look at a few things that teachers can do with it. And these are sort of some of the things that I really like that teachers can do. And no, it's great for producing materials and producing them very quickly. You know, things that would normally take me as a teacher quite a long time to do. I put a few examples down here. So here's an example, for example, songs, you know, and these are the prompts that you can use to try to get it to produce a song. So, you know, you can get it to write a song about anything for you. You could, if you're doing a lesson on chocolate, get it to write a song about chocolate. The second prompt You know, you can get it to write a song that includes a specific language point. So, you know, you can ask it for a song about chocolate that includes past perfect continuous if you want to, if that one needs to be an example. And, you know, you can actually, one thing you can actually do is if the prompt isn't here, but you can ask it to produce a song based on the lyrics of a song that your students will already know. So for example, you know, if your students know the lyrics to Strangers in the Night, you can ask it to produce a song based on that tune including this language point, and you know, it will do that for you and about a specific topic. So it can do some really marvelous things really very quickly. You know, the similar thing with poems, you can ask it to produce poems, and you can ask it to produce them on a specific topic or in the style of. So for example, you could ask it to produce a poem about social media in the style of William Shakespeare, and it will rapidly produce a poem for you. We could do that actually. Let's have a quick demo to see if we can get that to work, to prove that. I'm going to start a new chat. Okay. And instantly, I've got a poem about social media in the style of William Shakespeare. You know, I could have done it myself. I might have been able to do it better, but I don't think so. But I certainly couldn't have done it as quickly. So, you know, that's a really, you know, fast way of producing sort of content for my students. Okay, so more prompts here. Prompts for stories. You know, you can create a plot line for a story. Often it's nice to get our students to do creative writing work and write stories, but you know, sometimes they have problems thinking about what to write about. So if you just use this prompt, it will give them a plot outline, and then they can write the story based on that. So good way to get them to do creative writing. If you like to get your students to do plays or drama, there are a selection of prompts here which will enable ChatGPT to write a play for your students. And you can choose the topic, you can choose the number of characters. There's the second one, you can actually base it on a book. So if, for example, you're studying a book with your students, you can get ChatGPT to create a play with the number of students you want in each group based on the theme of that book. And you know, it will do that instantly, and your students will have the play to read through and work with. Another thing you can do is actually select the choice of playwright or the style of playwright. So if you want to, you can get the ChatGPT to produce a play in the style of Shakespeare. One of the final things in terms of creating materials that I'll look at, these are just a few of loads and loads of examples of things that you can do, is written communication. You can get examples of written communication to base your content around. And again, this is really useful if you want to get sort of, for example, business emails or something like that. And it will distinguish between the styles. So you could get it to write it in a formal style and then write again in an informal style. And then you can get students to compare to see what's the difference between formal and informal styles. And again, this is something that I could write myself, but it would take hours. And with ChatGPT, I can do that in minutes. It's very quick to do. As you saw with the kind of song that it created, you know, it produces things very quickly. So if you're looking to compare formal and informal styles in any kind of text, then you know that can produce those materials for you rapidly. So those are a few things that teachers can do to create materials. Another thing it can do for you, and this is a really interesting thing from our perspective as teacher educators, is that it can also write lesson plans for you. So for example, I have a prompt here. There's a prompt template where you can just ask it to act as a teacher, tell it how long your lesson is, tell it what level your students are and what your aim is, and even what kind of approach you want, and it will write you a lesson. I'll grab this prompt here now, and we'll see how long it takes to write a 60-minute lesson. We'll go back to ChatGPT, start a new chat, and there I've just pasted the prompt in, and now it's creating my lesson plan for me. Okay, it's given me a means of assessing the success of the lesson. It's got suggestions for homework there, and here it has, there's my duration, my objective, the materials I need, and the procedure. It's interesting that ChatGPT isn't very good at counting, because every stage in the procedure is stage 1. But as you can see, there's, it's got a warmer, and then it's in test, teach, test mode. Okay, and I can ask it to change that. I could ask it to change, so rewrite the lesson as guided discovery. So if I want to experiment with different methodologies, it's quickly rewritten that lesson plan now in a kind of guided methodology, guided discovery methodology approach. And again, it's got all of the things I need to do that. So I think, that's a really useful thing to do. I'm not saying it's a better lesson that I could produce myself, or if even it's a great lesson. And I think you have to go through and check to check the quality of the lesson and check that it's suitable for your students. But I think in terms of teacher educators, I think this has a lot of repercussions for, how we train teachers. And, it's something that we really need to think about. If our teachers who are maybe unqualified or have just started their training start using this, how do we get them to evaluate the quality? Do they just produce those lessons and take them straight into the class without any real knowledge or understanding of them? How does this reflect on what we can do? There's sort of a big question there about, do they just trust that ChatGPT is a better lesson planner than they are? How do we deal with that? I think that's something that we need to think about. I'd like to have a look at a few things that students can do as well, because I think this is something that's really exciting about ChatGPT too, is that if students can use it on their own, there are an awful lot of things they can do. When I was trying to learn a language, I was always told that you would learn a language much better if you had a friend who spoke that language. So there's a little prompt here that can make ChatGPT into your student's friend. So if your student copies and pastes this into ChatGPT, it can become a friend that they can chat to in English, and it becomes like a diary that interacts with them. They can tell it about their day, and it will respond to them. That you can actually define what kind of friend you want it to be, whether you want it to be a sympathetic friend or one of those hard friends who tells you the things that you don't want to hear from anyone else. So I've defined it here as a sympathetic friend. So if I just copy that and paste that into ChatGPT, we can see sort of. Oh, hang on. My toolbar is always in the way. Let's go and put that in and see. So, I've typed it in, and it started by saying, what's going on in your life? So I'm saying I'm doing a webinar at the moment. It's very stressful. And look, it's reassuring me. You've got this. Keep pushing through, and remember that all your hard work will pay off. Well, I hope that's right. That's nice reassurance. So I'm not so sure. Believe in yourself and your abilities. You've prepared for this webinar. So yeah, it's really, it's nice to have that reassurance from my ChatGPT friend. Yeah. So, it's a nice thing, if your students approach it something like it being their diary, they're constantly getting responses. So it becomes a very fluent conversation and a very natural conversation for them. Another thing that they could do is actually use it as a teacher. And again, there's a prompt here that they can put in to use it as a teacher. I'll just copy that and paste it in new chat. Okay, so I've asked it to become my teacher. I've used the prompt act as, so I've told it to act as a language teacher, and it says it's ready. It wants to know what I want to study. So I want to study narrative tenses. So I'm telling it what I want to study. Okay, and it's producing some materials for me and some activities. So it's produced a little gap fill text for me, suggesting some ways that I can help with that. There's a storytelling game that I can try. And when I've finished, I can copy and paste my results into ChatGPT, and it will give me feedback on them. So it can become something like a teacher for me and set me kind of tasks to do and homework. Another thing that, again, is really nice, it can become a role play partner. So if your students, in class, we often get our students to do role plays in pairs, but they can actually role play something at home. This, for example, this prompt is to act as an interviewer. So the role play starts with act as, always start prompts with act as if you want ChatGPT to take on a different role. And it says, I'll be a candidate and you will ask me interview questions. And you'll start with hi. So we can just edit this now, put it in and edit it. And we can decide what role we want it to interview us for. So I'm just going to edit this part and put in teacher trainer. Okay, so now it's going to edit, it's going to interview me for the role of teacher trainer. So can you start by telling me about yourself and your experience? I'll just cut it. I've been teaching for 30 years. That's great. Okay. And it answers, can you tell me what qualities you believe are essential for teacher trainer to possess? So it starts sort of digging into some quite interesting stuff there. And we can carry this on, and it will carry on for quite some time. So if it was our students, for example, we could get them to role play, you want to become a business person, or you want to be an English teacher, or, for whatever job, or we can change it so that it takes on the role of somebody in a shop and we want to buy something from them, And so that's a great way for students to sort of practice the language. And unlike a lot of our kind of dialogue builds where we give students dialogues to practice leading up to a role play, this one is completely unpredictable. Everything is generated based on their response. Another thing that I love ChatGPT for is its ability to create interactive reading. And I don't know if your students are interested in Harry Potter and things like that, but this is a prompt based on the sort of Harry Potter story. And what it does, you can see it's a very long prompt there. It programs the AI chatbot to become part of the Harry Potter story, and it drops the student into the story. It starts at the point at which the students are being sorted by the sorting hat. I can just copy that and paste this in. I've got one, I think I can find one that I tried this earlier with it. So what it does is, let's go back a bit, this is quite long. So I've put the prompt in, and it starts at the stage in the story where the sorting hat is deciding what house the student will go into. So it sets the scene here. It says you're at a new school, it's Hogwarts. Sorting hat is sorting you. It asks me my name. It says, what's your name? First, I need to know your name. What is it? So I've put in Nick. It's nice that it's called me young one. Obviously, he doesn't know me that well. And Nick, the sorting hat repeats, it's time for testing. So it asked me some questions. Which of these traits do you value most? Bravery, intelligence, loyalty, or ambition? I put in ambition, and then it asked me some more questions, goals. What kind of magic am I interested in? Charms. And then it decides which of the houses it will put me into. So it's put me into Slytherin, which is the kind of nasty house, I think. And then it says, what would you like to do now you've been sorted into Slytherin? So, of course, I'd like to learn some magic. And it puts me into a scene where I learn some magic. And so someone called Marcus approaches me and offers, need any help finding your way? What do I say to him? I say, no, thanks, thanks, but I can manage. And so it continues the story. So the story is completely generated and uniquely generated based on my responses and my desires. It isn't like I'm walking through a pre-programmed story. Everything that, every step of the story is generated by my own response. And, for students, I think that's amazing. That's an amazing motivation to read and to progress through a story because you're in control of it. And you could put 30 students into a room, each one with a different computer, and each one would have a completely different experience based on their individual responses. And that's a wonderful kind of act of narrative and way to engage with literature. I think that has huge potential for our students in terms of developing their reading skills. Okay, I'm going to give you a break from listening to me, and we'll sort of deal with a few questions, and then we'll move on to sort of a bit more about ourselves as educators and how it can help us. Okay.
Okay, everyone, please write your questions in the Q&A. So we have already received some questions from you. And thank you so much for sharing your questions. So we've tried to categorize the questions into 5 categories for now. Nick, this category might increase. So we have received lots of questions, first of all. Thank you so much for sharing such valuable information, insights on AI. So we all know about it, but we don't really know how to use it. From the pre-webinar poll as well, we have seen that teachers need more examples. So I'm sure the audience has gained a lot of practical tips. And now from the technical side, first of all, I will share some questions. You can give a general answer. First of all, how does ChatGPT work? So what is the difference from a Google search? Does it work in French, in different languages? And it doesn't have audio, right? It's just text. So there are some other apps for the audio. Can you just summarize these technical bits?
Yeah. So in terms of audio, that's an easy one. If you're using Google Chrome, there are a number of different plugins that you can use so that you can speak to it instead of typing, and it will respond to you using text to speech. And if you use those, it can actually check your pronunciation as well, because it can tell you what it does and doesn't understand, and which is quite interesting. There are lots of different ones. I'm not sure which is the best one, but there are 2, 3, 4, 5 different ones that you can find. And if you just Google Chrome extensions for speaking to ChatGPT, you can find those. In terms of languages, other languages, yes, ChatGPT is available in lots of other languages. It isn't just English. I'm not sure exactly how many it is, but if you go to ChatGPT and ask it, it will tell you. The really interesting question here is the one about Google, because I think that's a mistake that a lot of people are making. They think it's just like a more complex search engine, and it's not like that. If you go to Google and you search for something, it will produce you the same results. If you search for the same thing again, it will produce you the same results based on what it thinks are the top 10 most appropriate links, and you'll get links to different resources. And that's all kind of factual stuff, assuming that those top 10 links are to articles that are accurate. If you go to ChatGPT and ask it the same question, if you ask it the same question 10 times, it will give you 10 different answers. And ChatGPT, ChatGPT is more like it's more like having a very knowledgeable friend who has strong opinions. So if you want facts, go to Google. It will give you facts and links to factual resources that exist. If you want opinions, ideas, creativity, then go to ChatGPT, because it will never say it doesn't know. It will just make something up if it doesn't know, because it's been programmed to be inventive with language. And for me, that's a marvelous thing. If you're doing research and you're looking for resources for your thesis, it's not a great thing. Go to Google, find those resources there. Or there's another alternative that I'll suggest later. But if you're looking for ideas and opinions and creativity, then it's better to go to ChatGPT. But remember, they're not the same thing. They're very different tools, and they give you very different results.
That's a very comprehensive, very clear answer. Thank you so much, Nick. And because you also mentioned how students and teachers can use it, there were some questions about plagiarism. For example, there are a lot of students who started using it. Sultan asks, is it an effective tool, or will it affect students' performance in a negative way? So what do you think about this? And yes, what advice would you give to teacher educators who are concerned about plagiarism using ChatGPT?
It's interesting. Plagiarism is kind of an interesting term for it. There are different ways you can look at plagiarism. In a way, ChatGPT is a plagiaristic tool in that it takes from the complete internet, but it reformulates that and produces new ideas based on it. So in that sense, it isn't plagiarizing, because it's not taking something exactly like from the Harry Potter book. It's not taking a verse from the Harry Potter book and putting it into that story it creates for us. It's taking ideas from that and recreating something new, which is what people do. That's what creativity is about. Nobody comes up with a 100% authentic idea. Our knowledge is is passed on and built from each other, and exchanged, and we build something new based on what somebody else has done, and ChatGPT works in that way. In terms of the other kind of plagiarism, for example, your student going to ChatGPT and asking it to write you an assignment, then it will do that. It depends I wouldn't say it will do that really well, particularly if it's a very long assignment. So if you're looking for a thesis and you need 10,000 words, then probably ChatGPT won't do it in one go. You can't just say, write me a 10,000 word thesis and it will do it. It will probably stop after about 400 words. You could break it down into chunks and get it to write the individual pieces of the thesis for you, which is a different matter. But to do that, you would still have to have a good understanding of the subject. But I think what's becoming evident is that ChatGPT will be used as a tool for developing writing and producing writing in the real world. It already is. We're already using it to produce materials. People are using it to produce emails for them. And I think we have to teach our students how to use it in that way, and that we have to redesign assessment appropriately so that, it assesses this new reality that we're living in. We can't go back and continue testing students using assignments, which is a kind of at least 200-year-old principle for testing, when we live in a very modern world where these things are possible. So we have to rethink assessment, I think, and that's long overdue, because for a long time students have been able to cheat. This is nothing new. People write their things on their hands to go into tests. I remember cheating when I was at school, on my spelling test or something like that when I was about 8 years old. You can pay somebody to write a thesis for you very cheaply. We have to rethink how we assess our students, and it's time we did that. It's beyond time, I think.
So we need to, it will be difficult for us to adapt to this new thinking style. But yes, I think you're right. Absolutely agree with you. So we need some new ways to teach and assess our learners. There were also some questions about the intellectual property. So Paul says, he has some worries about intellectual property. This appears to confirm some big issues here. Another teacher participant says, do we have a duty to declare that the source of our lesson resources is ChatGPT?
Duty, I don't know about duty. I think if you're using ChatGPT to produce a text that you're publishing, then I think it's a good idea to cite ChatGPT for maybe some of the sources, or to having some involvement in it. It's difficult to know. It depends on how much that is. But I think if you're using it, acknowledge it. Why not? I think in terms of intellectual property, things that you produce using it become your property. So if you've produced an assignment and you've used ChatGPT to help with that, then that assignment is still your property. It doesn't partially belong to OpenAI, the company that owns it. But there is this other issue about, is OpenAI exploiting other people's property? And I think it's just taking things which are in the public domain. So it's taking things from the internet, and it's not directly taking big chunks of those. Like I say, it's using the individual words and context and tagging them up so that ChatGPT understands them, so that when it produces something, it's producing something authentic based on its understanding of that vast language-based resource. I think where there is more likely to be a legitimate problem is AI that's creating images, and it's creating images based on vast resources of other images, and I think that's potentially a problem, because it's hard to know how much it's taking. It could be taking a complete face from somebody, although AI is quite bad at faces, but it's hard to know about that. But again, that's something that artists have always done. They've always modernism is about that. It's about taking things from different other artists and producing something new with them. And in a way, that's what ChatGPT does. So as long as OpenAI have done it, with permission and in line with copyright, then I think that's okay.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so Nick, we have more questions. If you like, let's continue and have another Q&A.
Okay, well, we can come back to Q&A at the end, and I'll just show a few more things before we get there.
Thank you.
Thanks for the questions, though. Lots of interesting questions, and some of them are things that I'd sort of anticipated to deal with, but we can sort of deal with them later. So I think one thing that's really important, and if you want to get good results from ChatGPT, is to understand that it's very important how you construct your prompt. As you saw, that prompt about Hogwarts and creating that story was very, very long. It's not just someone saying, hey, make me a story about Hogwarts and I'll be one of the characters. You have to construct these prompts carefully, and to get the best from it, this is what you need. You need to make clear the context. What kind of output do you want? What topic do you want it to be in? You can even suggest how you structure it. Do you want it in paragraphs? Do you want the output in a table? Do you want it just as bullet points? So you can even suggest a writing style. Tell it about audience. Who is ChatGPT writing for? Because if you don't tell it who's going to be reading the text, it will take a kind of generic level of knowledge. If you specify that this is for university professors, it will give you much more intellectual results. If you specify that this is to be understood by a 5-year-old child, then it will lower the level. It can respond in that way, and also be kind of put some constraints on it, because often ChatGPT will just talk about itself and tell you it's a language model for producing language. So at the end, one of the constraints that you can use is, just ask it to tell you it understands, and then it won't give you all that spiel. So for example, here's an example of a bad prompt. So please read my text and suggest ways I can improve it. If you did that and then you put your text in, ChatGPT would respond and it would give you feedback. But if you want really good quality feedback, then you have to make these different things clear. So please read and you add the type of text, you tell it what it's about, you tell it who you're writing for, you tell it you want a list of bullet points for ways you can improve it, or it could be a table, and give some suggestions about how you would like to add to it. Do you just want feedback on what's correct and what's incorrect? Or do you want sort of constructive feedback about how to make it better? And then there's the constraint at the end. If you understand, reply with "I'm ready." So if you put that into ChatGPT with those things outlined, it will then ask you for the text. And when you put the text in, of course, you will get much better feedback, because ChatGPT then understands, what you want from it. If you're too general, it will just give you a very general answer. So think about how you write your prompts. That's very important. And again, that's something that we need to teach teachers, is to how to write their prompts well. In terms of teacher educators, these are some of the things that it can do for you. We've already seen example lessons and example lesson plans. I know that's something really useful, that getting trainee teachers to analyze different lesson plans and compare them. So you can very easily, like I did in the demonstration, come up with 2 lesson plans based on the same topic using very different approaches. So it can show the difference between different methodologies, and students can evaluate those lesson plans, see what's good about them, what's not so good, how realistic are they, how could they improve on them. So having that kind of material, I think, is very useful. You could ask it just to produce a list of different methodologies. If you're short suggestions for activities, you can easily go to it and say, give me 20 examples of activities to practice narrative tenses, and it will produce them instantly, and then you can use them with trainees to get them to evaluate those activities. So it's a great way to come up with lots of content for different things that our students, our trainee teachers, can evaluate. Different contexts for using language as well. In what context would you use, the third conditional, for example, asking it to suggest different contexts, and then getting students to write, for trainee teachers to produce materials or lessons based around those contexts. That's something about teaching grammar that often gets neglected. We focus on structure and form and meaning, but we forget about, what context is this language used in? So let's ask now. Let's see if it can suggest some context for using the third conditional. So we've got sort of 5 different suggestions from it instantly about where third conditional would be used. Okay, so it's used for regrets. So, okay, so I've asked it to write me a short conversation between a man and his daughter that has examples of regrets. So instantly we've got a little conversation there from him for us. So we could use that in our materials. And I've asked it to analyze the use of the third conditionals in there. So it's given me an analysis of the use. So instantly we can sort of produce some really useful materials for our trainees, and they can do that, go through those same stages. How would they use third conditional? What kind of context would they use it in? How would they analyze it? Produce an example text that uses it. And again, that's done very quickly. Just in a few minutes, we can come up with that. We can ask for things like concept summaries as well, which is a really useful thing. So, summarize 10 different 10 different methodologies that are used for language teaching, and it will do that for us. So loads of different ways that we can sort of produce really kind of useful materials very, very quickly. Of course, we do still have to check them and make sure that they're correct, because as I said, ChatGPT has strong opinions, but opinions aren't facts, so it can make mistakes, and you have to check on that. There's a nice prompt that I'd like to show you here, which is you can actually get ChatGPT to become a training mentor. You can make it a kind of Socratic teacher, and this can work for you, and it can also work for your trainee students. There's a nice prompt here, and it's about getting it to become to ask you questions to test and develop your knowledge. I'm sure you've all learned about Socratic teaching and Socratic questioning. So instead of telling people things, you ask them questions and you guide their understanding in that way. So I put my prompt in, and it should, great. So what would you like to explore today? What topic? So I can suggest a topic. I'm on narrative tenses today. I've got that stuck in my head. So I'll go for teaching narrative tenses. So now it starts to ask me questions to help develop and test my knowledge and guide my development of knowledge about narrative tenses. So can you start by telling me what you're already about teaching narrative tenses? So I don't know very much. I'm just going to say they're past tenses. Put that in. Okay, that's correct. Can you name the different past tenses that are commonly used for narrating stories? Okay. I put 2 in. And I explain the difference between them. Okay, so it's starting to dig it a little deeper into my knowledge. So in that way, ChatGPT can become my training mentor. I can ask it about anything, whether it's teaching or specific tenses or different methodological approaches. And I can use that prompt to sort of help. It will act as a partner to help me develop my knowledge and to sort of mentor me and to sort of ask me questions to guide me about what I need to know. And I think that's a very powerful thing, both for us as teacher educators. Often we work alone and don't have people to work with, and it's good to sort of engage with something else to sort of help us develop our own knowledge. But I can think potentially it's something that we could use with our trainees as well, and give them access to it so they can become a bit more autonomous, and we could set them the task to find out about something using this training mentor, and it will guide them through that. And then when we come together, they can share what they've learned. So that's sort of, I think, a great way to sort of develop their teaching and their teaching knowledge, and getting them to be a bit more autonomous. Okay, I'll come on to some of the issues, and I think some of these have we've come up onto already. I think the first one is this one about research, and there was a question about the sort of difference between Google and ChatGPT. And that you can quote me on this. ChatGPT isn't a search engine. It doesn't give you facts. It gives you opinions. If you're really looking for an AI tool to do research, then you're better off with something like Find, which there should be a link to here, but my link has gone dead. Okay, I'll just grab the URL from here. So Find is like a combination of Google and ChatGPT. And what it does is it comes up with search engine results, but it also produces you a kind of ChatGPT type text, which tells you about things. So for example, if I ask it, you can ask it, tell so I'm going to ask it about collocation in English language teaching. And so it's a combination. So it gives me that ChatGPT type opinion, information kind of thing. But on this side, it also has the kind of hard facts and links. So there's a link to the British Council website, which I'm sure will give you great information about collocation. And so it's got the factual side as well. So if that's a much better tool if you're doing research and you're kind of doing research for a thesis or something like that. I'll put the link into the chat for you. And you can pick it up later. You know, that's a much better tool, a more appropriate tool that combines the two together. And I think that becomes really powerful when you combine those two together as well. So, you know, it's not about kind of ChatGPT isn't good at research. It's not the appropriate tool. That's not what it's good at. You know, let's choose the appropriate tool for the jobs that we want to do. There's this one on, you know, the question of cheating, and I think which came up, you know, and I think basically it's time to rethink assessment so it mirrors the needs of the 21st century environment. You know, AI isn't going to away. It's going to be something we live with. It's going to become a useful tool that we work with, our students work with, both academically and professionally and personally as well. So we need to change assessment so that it mirrors that reality. You know, that's my opinion as well. Anyway, probably ChatGPT would tell you the same. And the other thing I think, and this is a big thing I think for us as teachers, and teacher educators, is we need to rethink what we teach as a writing skill. You know, how do we start teaching writing skills now that so many of the things we teach, for example, sentence level structure or spelling or grammar, ChatGPT actually will do very well for us. You know, so where do we go in terms of what we teach? What are writing skills now? You know, and I don't have an answer for that. You know, it's something that needs a lot of thought, I think, and you know, how we approach that, both in terms of, you know, how we teach students to write an essay now, if they're using ChatGPT as well, or how do we teach them to write an email? Does writing skills just become something about how to write a prompt? You know, what do we teach? I don't know. I don't have the answers for that. So I'll move on from that one. So that's pretty much the end of the presentation. I'm happy to take questions now. And if you have any questions, by all means, put them into the Q&A thing. If you don't, I've actually added a little link here to an app that you can download for free. It's not a free app, but you can download it for free. But if you scan the QR code or go to this link and click on Buy Now and enter the coupon code BC, standing for British Council AI, it will reduce the price of the app to $0, so you can download it for free. And that app has lots of links to different tools, like the tools ChatGPT and other AI tools, as well as other digital tools. Has some articles for you to read as well, so you can read up on some background. But you can download that for free. That's your reward for listening to me talk about ChatGPT for an hour. So thanks very much. So we'll come back to any questions if there are any.
That's really great. Thank you so much, Nick, for this link and for the useful information that you have provided. So I realized that it's important to remain open to possibilities. So just like we use traditional tools like pen and paper, and we also had web tools. 10 years ago, we were talking about web tools. Now we can also incorporate AI into the curriculum and teach students how to use it responsibly, right?
Yeah, it's interesting because a lot of the arguments against ChatGPT, things like plagiarism and cheating, were the same arguments that were used about the internet back in, 96, 97. People were saying, well, everybody's just going to go and Google and get their answers to their assignments. It's the same answer, it's the same, argument and the same problems, and we've learned to live with Google and learn to work around it. So we can do the same with AI, really.
Mm-hmm. And I also like your approach when you mentioned that it can act as your mentor. I've noticed that I use it as a critical friend during my research, and it gives every learner their personal tutor. So for self-directed learning, which we discussed last month, it provides every teacher also with their own teaching as AI teaching assistants. So yeah, there are lots of opportunities. And you also mentioned prompt engineering. It's a useful skill, right, for teachers and for students as well to improve and use
Yeah.
language
Yeah, I
models.
think prompt engineering is essential, really. If you want to use, ChatGPT and other AI tools, understanding how to prompt it, it becomes really essential, and giving it, sufficient information, I think is really important. It's probably one of the most fundamental skills to getting the best out of it. And when I hear a lot of negativity about ChatGPT, about, well, it didn't give me a very good answer, it didn't give me, but often that's because they've asked very general questions, and you haven't told. Often you have to tell them who you are. ChatGPT needs to know who you are so that it can level its response appropriately. And I think that's important too. It can read, but it can't see you. It doesn't know anything about you.
There are some questions about thinking skills and creativity. So will AI and ChatGPT reduce thinking skills, or dependence on AI, will it take away the creative thinking ability of teachers and students? So what would you say?
Yeah, I think creativity is a really interesting one because, actually I find working with it to be a very creative process. And I don't think, I don't think it will, I don't think it will destroy our creativity. I think it might actually enhance the creativity, but I guess it depends on, again, on how you use it. And with the critical thinking, there are some really nice prompts that, I haven't put them in here, but I have some really nice prompts that you can use it with it to develop critical thinking. You can ask it to act as a conspiracy theory GPT, and it will produce examples of conspiracy theories or completely fallacious thinking based on fallacies. And then you can sort of analyze those and deconstruct them. Or you can get it to create discussions between somebody who's logical and somebody who's a kind of conspiracy theory promoter, and it will kind of show you the discussion and the kind of arguments that they produce. So it is a good way to understand people's lack of critical thinking as well. I think it's a really nice tool for that.
I read somewhere it says any technology is an extension of humans, and AI is an extension of human intelligence, and it enhances human thinking capacity. But I think, as you say, it depends on how we use it, and the questions, the kinds of questions we ask really determine output.
Again, it's like the classic argument, it's a tool, and like any tool, you can give someone a hammer and they can build a house with it. You can give somebody else a hammer and they'll kill someone with it. It depends on how we use it, really.
There are some concerns about the extent to which teachers' role, may be replaced by machines.
Well, I think that's an interesting one. I think I don't see it replacing teachers, because what we're very good at is empathizing with our students and helping to encourage and motivate them. I think if you've got a really motivated student, then they can do a lot with ChatGPT, but if they're not motivated, then they're not even going to look at it. So, I think, teachers' role in sort of, nurturing students as people and developing their motivation is kind of really important and essential. But I think, where there are lots of places around the world where students don't have access to good teachers, and that's somewhere where ChatGPT can make a huge difference. There are places around the world where people want to be teachers and don't have access to teacher trainers. So, that's somewhere where it can make a really big difference. If someone can sort of use it to train themselves to become a better teacher, then that's great.
Yes, you are right. So it's not just execution, the knowledge transmission or
No.
not routine tasks. So we shouldn't disregard the creative and social emotional aspects of teaching.
ChatGPT can't put our students into groups and get them to talk to each other, and then, we need something that does that as well.
Mm-hmm. And also they suggest that it can actually help teachers with grading, record keeping, the kinds of tasks that take a lot of time for teachers, so that teachers can actually focus on more creative.
Yeah. I have a nice sequence of prompts where you can actually get ChatGPT. First, you ask it to create a set of possible assignments that you can give to your students. Then you choose one of those assignments and you ask ChatGPT to suggest criteria on which the assignment should be marked. So it gives you a list of criteria. And then you ask ChatGPT to create a rubric based on those criteria for 4 different levels. And so it will create a table for you with the different levels, the skill levels. So, you have your first criteria and it tells you what would be a fail, what would be sort of bare pass, and what would be excellent. And so it describes all those criteria for you. And then at the end of that, you can say, here's an assignment, mark it based on those criteria, and it will assess your assignments for you. And again, marking all those assignments and giving students feedback can take ages. But, if we can use something like ChatGPT to do that, that's a start. I think we still need to check it before we give it to our students. But that's a great start in taking sort of a huge amount of that workload away from us.
Yes, you're right. And it's interesting that you have described this process in stages. So you didn't ask ChatGPT to do all of this at once, but step by step, right, with this prompt. So
yeah, sometimes it's better to stage the way you discuss things with it rather than doing a very large prompt that it could get confused in the middle. That's a very difficult one to do as a single prompt. But
So in the future, maybe we'll think about these tasks in our minds, like what kinds of prompts would best give you the results that help you, give you more time for other more creative stuff.
Yeah, interestingly, you could ask ChatGPT what prompts it would need in order to produce an assignment and some rubrics for you, and see whether it produces a good prompt for you to give back to it, then to use it. It's interesting in that way. It becomes a very circular learning process, I think.
Yes, so there are also some questions about the limitations. What are the limitations? You mentioned them briefly, but can we just, summarize them briefly?
I think the limitations, particularly with ChatGPT, is it's not great on facts, solid, absolute facts. If you go and ask it for kind of, for example, if you're doing research, if you ask for 10 websites about collocations, probably it will give you a list of 10, but not all of them will be correct. It's not good at maths. Often maths problems it does very badly unless you tell it how to think about the math problems. It does things like that very badly. So what it's not so good at is factual stuff, telling you about other sources, things like that, which, coincidentally are all things which you need to be good at to write a very good thesis or assignment. You need to cite resources accurately. If you ask ChatGPT to do that, it will probably make some up for you. It will look like they're all valid, but if you're checking on them, you'll find that a lot of those sources just don't exist, or a lot of the websites don't exist if you ask for a list.
Yes.
So those are its limitations.
It does very confidently. That's the key part. So we need to check, make sure they are.
Check everything it does, because it's like, I kind of look at it like a very knowledgeable friend. It has huge knowledge, but it will never say it doesn't know. Even if it doesn't know, it will just make something up. So it's a knowledgeable friend that you can't 100% trust.
Yes. So one final question I want to ask you. This is something general. So in the research papers about AI, they describe education as the Cinderella of the AI story, and they suggest that the use of AI in teaching and learning contexts is an underdeveloped area. Do you think there are more things to do, more opportunities, but why is it described as this Cinderella of the AI story education?
Well, I don't know. I haven't heard that, the Cinderella expression. I think there's a lot more that it can do. You know, I think sort of what I've showed in this webinar is just a few tiny examples of a huge potential that it has, and that potential will keep growing as well. You know, soon you'll be able to put a face on GPT, and it will look like a person on the screen, and you'll just talk to it, and things like that. That could be done within, you know, months. So there's a long way for it to go, you know, and it's progressing very quickly. But, you know, I think, you know, often education is a neglected area because it's not seen as being an area where there are huge profits to be made. And, you know, and realistically, a lot of companies that look at things like AI look at how they can make money from it, you know, and, you know, education isn't that area where you're going to sort of instantly make a huge fortune. So, you know, I think that's why we get a little bit neglected, but the potential is huge.
Yes, so it's huge, and well, we will all learn together, and maybe this time next year, we'll talk about something totally different, and we will have discovered some other aspects, some new tools. Every second, I think there is a new tool coming out. So it's really very exciting, and we would like to thank you once again for sharing your
Thank you. Thank you.
insights, your creativity with us, and for the free tool. It's the book, I guess, is it?
It's an app. There's an app on various tools. It has about 100 links to about 140 different tools in it, with sort of video tutorials and some articles. And I'll put the link to the presentation back into the chat as well. I've just put that in. It's a Genially presentation, so you can go there and grab some of the prompts if you want to, and follow some of those up. Try them with ChatGPT, edit the prompts, make them your own. Okay, thanks. Thank you.
Also kindly shared some useful links with us about AI and ChatGPT, and we put them all together. You can enroll and sign up for the Get Up to Speed with AI from our website. So if you go to Nick's page on the Teaching English website, if you scroll down, you'll be able to sign up to Get Up to Speed with AI newsletter, and for 4 weeks, in the next 4 weeks, you will get useful links about ChatGPT, AI, and some useful tools as well. And this webinar is also being recorded. You will have the webinar recording in the next couple of days on Teaching English. And also, you will have the feedback form. So we would appreciate it if you could share your feedback with us. And then you will be able to download your certificates. And don't forget to sign up, subscribe to our monthly newsletter for teacher educators, and register for our next webinar, which is how can we help teachers alternate between languages in the classroom effectively, on Tuesday, 27th of June. So we very much hope to see you all again in the future, and I wish you all the best. Thank you, everyone. And thank you so much, Nick, once again.
Okay. Thanks very much. Thank you for listening.